Okay, so the question is, why did I move from the USA to Hong Kong? So I guess a little background is necessary here. Um, my whole family, we lived in the USA for, our whole lives. My parents were retired, but they were not old enough where they qualified for Medicare. And since they weren't working, they also didn't have health care. So, and they didn't buy healthcare insurance separately because as an individual, at that time, it was, ridiculous. It was so expensive to buy health insurance that basically, if you didn't have health insurance through your employer, you didn't have health insurance. So my parents didn't have health insurance coverage at that time. My mom had gotten cancer of the liver, and it was, it was tough. If we had tried to uh, get treatment in the US, we could have done it financially. We could have done things like, sell our houses, uh, max out our credit cards, um, and we could have theoretically, you know, been able to pay for her treatment. Um, Although, statistically, that just would have, given her a little bit extra time and left us financially, ruined, I guess. Um, and then one of the doctors actually asked, if we had residency in some other place. And at that point, my aunt actually suggested, hey, uh, because of our grandparents, um, my mom and my aunts, they have Hong Kong permanent residency. And as a Hong Kong permanent resident, they had access to government subsidized healthcare. Uh, Not for me and my sister, because neither of us were Hong Kong residents, but my mom did. So uh, they'd done a little bit of asking around and checking, and they decided, okay, my mom was going to go to Hong Kong for treatment. Um, and I don't remember the exact time frame or how quick the decision was made, but my sister and I took turns uh, staying in Hong Kong with my mom. Um, my sister worked for Continental Airlines, so she was able to, fly back and forth relatively easily. So that was kind of a plus. I'd found some. I had used my sister's tickets too, but I'd also found some other, fairly inexpensive ways to fly back and forth between the U.S. and Hong Kong too. Um, so we were kind of doing this back and forth kind of thing and balancing our jobs in the USA with taking time off and keeping our mom company while she was, getting treatment in Hong Kong and recuperating in Hong Kong. Uh, we stayed in Causeway Bay. So this place was like, you know, totally hustle and bustle until late at night and, just uh, crazy busy, it seems like all the time. But it was really interesting because it was like big city craziness and big city activity, but without big city crime. So that was kind of, an interesting thing to notice at the beginning. But anyway, I guess that's away from the main story here. Um, we'd also we were able to hire a nurse, an actual, registered nurse that would come over and spend, about 8 hours, I think, a day to help out, just to help take care of my mom. Uh, because sometimes she'd have to spend some time in the hospital, and sometimes she was staying at the apartment that we had rented in Causeway Bay. Um, and I remember thinking when we were pricing, how much it would cost to hire someone full time. Well, full time meaning, not 24 hours, but like, 8 hours a day ish. Uh, we got some prices, and my sister and I were like, "What? That's it? That's all it costs? Okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah, we can afford that." Um, for sure, it would have been impossible to hire a nurse in the US to provide that level of care at that price. And this is, without any subsidies or anything like that, without any insurance, we were able to afford this. Again, I don't remember the exact dollar amount, but I remember just thinking, "Oh, wow, that's nothing. We can totally do this." Uh, what else? But since we had this time in Hong Kong, um, where we weren't actively working, my sister and I kind of accidentally discovered that you could basically buy random localish things and post them on eBay and sell them and make money. Uh, like like those blue glazed porcelain cups, those Chinese style cups or bowls also, where like you can kind of like look through them and like some light kind of shines through in some dot patterns. These things were like inexpensive here, and let's say they were 100 Hong Kong dollars. Um, you could post them on eBay and sell them for 100 US dollars. So the exchange rate was like 7 or 8 to 1 or something like that. So it was like, wow, this is a pretty good deal. You don't need too many transactions like this to make an okay stream of income. So we were selling things like porcelain, leather goods, random stuff, wind up old style wind up alarm clocks, LED lights and flashlights. It was so random. But it was in a strange way. It was also kind of funny because it was like, wow, wow, this stuff is so cheap here, and we can, we can make money, selling it, and all we need to do is, go down to the post office and ship it. It had gotten to the point where the people at the post office, recognized us. That was kind of funny also. um, there were also some things which, well, it's going to the next topic, because we were spending, at this point, I think it was like we'd been here in Hong Kong for months, not nonstop, but back and forth over the course of a couple of months. There were some things that I started to notice uh, about staying in Hong Kong. Um, like for example, I think of myself as a car guy. Growing up on Long Island, you know, uh, car stuff was the cool thing to do. Talking about cars made you popular. You had to know about cars. You had to be able to talk cars. You had to have a car. But after spending a few months carless, I kind of realized that, hey, I don't miss doing car maintenance. I don't miss all those, random things that go along with having a car. Um, then there's other small random stuff, like I actually like the outdoors and trees and grass, but then I realized I don't miss doing the yard work. I don't miss mowing the lawn and, raking up the leaves and things like that. Um, what else? In America, public transport in most places is kind of a joke. Um, if you want to get anywhere, you got to have a car. But in Hong Kong, the public transport was so good that even rich people would be taking public transport. Unless you were so rich where you can also afford a driver, then I guess they would be chauffeured around. But for the people that were rich enough where they were wealthy but not wealthy enough to have their own private chauffeur, I guess they would still take public transport. Uh, and it was kind of funny because I did have a car in Hong Kong for a while, and then I kind of realized, wow, it's just more convenient to take public transport and take taxis. Um, it had gotten to the point where, I was using my car like once or twice a month, and I was kind of like forcing myself to use it. Uh, so it's kind of, it's a really different a different environment, a real big change. Let's see what else. You know, I don't miss being randomly called a chink by someone passing by, when I'm in the US. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens often enough where, it does get on your nerves. Uh, I don't miss seeing some kid make the, Chinese eyes gesture at me when I'm stuck in traffic, or even, just on the highway, when people pass each other. Uh, I totally don't miss that at all, you know. Um, I don't miss the expense of eating out in the USA. Uh, Eating out in Hong Kong, it's relatively cheap if we're comparing the same level and quality of food. I think it's comparatively less expensive in Hong Kong. So I definitely don't miss the prices in the US. And I guess for the next topic, so obviously I'm ethnic Asian. And when I was living in America, I knew I was in the minority, but I never really thought of myself in that way. At least, not on a day-to-day basis. Every day, the only Asian people I ever interacted with were, my mom, my dad, and my sister. Everyone else I interacted with was not Asian. You know, but after spending a couple of months in Hong Kong, I'm not sure. I don't think any specific incident happened, but something clicked, and I realized, oh, this is what it's like for white people in America. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that racism is better or worse in either place, but I'm just focusing on my perception as an ethnic Asian person who's lived in both places. So, spending time in Hong Kong has let me realize, oh yeah, there is this benefit of not being in the minority. Uh, and then, later on, my mom passed away, and I went back to my, normal American life for a while. Um, but kind of after a year or two, I kind of realized, things aren't bad in America, but I don't like being a second class citizen. And this kind of bothered me. And then the company that I was working for at that time hadn't made payroll in a couple of months. So I'm not sure exactly, what I was thinking, but I kind of decided, well, now's a good time to make a change. And I decided to leave, and I decided to give Hong Kong a try for a half a year. And a half year kind of turned into a year, and that kind of turned into another year, and then it just kind of kept getting stretched longer and longer until I found myself becoming a transplant. And that's, I think, the short story. And I hope that answered the question.